Welcome, literary adventurers! Get ready to immerse yourself in Remain, the series. This isn't just listening, it's an opportunity to spark your imagination, deepen your understanding, and discover profound insights. In our fast-paced world, this audiobook offers a vital escape and a chance to truly connect with powerful ideas. So settle in, minimize distractions, and let the transformative journey of Remain the series begin right now.
Summary. For a woman with no past, the future is a blank page. But what if the past refuses to stay buried? She wakes up in a remote clinic with nothing but a name she doesn't recognize and a past that is a terrifying, silent void. Found on a mountainside after a tragic accident, the woman who the world calls Anya Sharma is a ghost to herself. She finds an unexpected sanctuary with Kanya, a compassionate mine owner, who offers her not just shelter, but a chance to build a new self from the ground up. In the quiet rhythm of this new life, surrounded by the scent of pine and rain-soaked earth, a powerful, unexpected love begins to bloom. The first true thing she has ever felt. But the ghosts of her past are not so easily forgotten. The arrival of a powerful family and a charismatic fiancé she doesn't remember shatters her fragile peace. They paint a picture of the old Anya, a dutiful heiress, a brilliant architect, a woman who was content with her perfectly orchestrated life. They offer her a world of immense wealth and privilege, a life she is told is her destiny. Yet, as hunting fragments of memory return, a heated argument, a secret passion she kept hidden, a desperate, whispered phone call in the dead of night, the official story begins to unravel. The person they describe feels like a stranger, and the life they want her to reclaim feels like a gilded cage. Why does their narrative feel so wrong? What were the real reasons for the tragic accident on that stormy night? And who was she running from, or what was she running to? Caught between the life she is told she must reclaim and the love that feels like her only truth, Anya discovers that her amnesia isn't just a medical condition, it's a battlefield. The person she is becoming is at war with the woman she was forced to be. To uncover the truth, she must confront the secrets buried not just by her family, but within her own mind. But will reclaiming her past shatter the only happiness she has ever known? Or will it finally set her free?
Chapter 1. The first thing to surface from the deep, dreamless dark was a scent. Two scents, warring for dominance. One was sharp, sterile and cold, the smell of antiseptic that pricked at the inside of my nose. The other was soft and sweet, a ghost of wildflowers on a warm breeze. They didn't belong together. The contradiction was a hook that pulled me slowly, reluctantly, toward consciousness. My eyelids were heavy, glued shut. I tried to command them to open, but the message from my brain seemed to travel through thick fog, arriving garbled and late. There was a low hum in the room, the buzz of a fluorescent light, and the gentle rustle of fabric. Someone was here. A deep, instinctual fear, cold and sharp, pierced the fog. It was an animal response, a primal terror that had no name and no source. I was prey. I was cornered. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the suffocating silence. With a gasp, my eyes flew open. The world swam into view, a blur of whitewashed walls and a ceiling with a hairline crack that looked like a river on a map. I was in a bed, a narrow one, with starchy white sheets pulled up to my chin, and sitting in a simple wooden chair beside me was a woman. She looked to be in her late 20s, with warm, olive-toned skin and dark hair tied back in a loose braid that fell over one shoulder. Her eyes, the color of rich, dark earth, were kind. They watched me with a quiet concern that did nothing to quell the panic clawing its way up my throat. I didn't know her. The realization was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I didn't know this woman. I didn't know this room. I searched my mind for a name, a place, a single memory to anchor myself to, but there was nothing. Only a vast, terrifying emptiness, a void where a person used to be. The woman leaned forward slightly, her expression softening. "It's okay," she said, her voice low and steady, like stones in a riverbed. "You're safe." Safe? I felt anything but. I tried to speak, to ask the 1,000 questions screaming in the vacuum of my mind, but my throat was dry and the words wouldn't form. As if sensing my struggle, she continued, "My name is Kanya. I found you on the side of the road, near my mine. There was a landslide. You were unconscious. Do you remember anything?" I stared at her, the single word echoing in the hollow chambers of my skull. Remember. I searched the void again, frantically this time, pushing against its silent, unyielding walls. Nothing. No name. No home. No yesterday. My gaze darted around the small clinic, desperate for a clue, a reflection, anything. On a small middle tray on the bedside table, next to a glass of water and a small vase holding the wildflowers I had smelled, lay a small silver-backed hand mirror. With a trembling hand, I reached for it. My fingers felt clumsy, disconnected from my own body. Kanya watched, her expression unreadable, as I lifted the mirror. My breath caught in my throat. A face stared back at me. A stranger's face. High cheekbones, a small scar just above the left eyebrow, and wide, terrified brown eyes. The woman in the mirror was me, and I had no idea who she was.
Chapter 2. The days that followed blurred into a quiet routine, each one a soft brushstroke painting over the raw canvas of my fear. My world was the four walls of the clinic room, the scent of wildflowers Kanya replaced every morning, and the steady, calming rhythm of her presence. She never pushed me for answers I didn't have. Instead, she brought me steaming bowls of soup, books she thought I might like, and stories about her life at the mine, her words weaving a small, safe cocoon around my emptiness. I learned the sound of her footsteps in the hallway. I learned that she hummed when she was content. I learned that the kindness in her eyes was not an act. In her presence, the gnawing terror of my blankness would recede, leaving a quiet ache I was learning to live with. For the first time since opening my eyes in this strange new life, I was beginning to feel something akin to peace. We were sitting in a patch of afternoon sun that streamed through the window, the low murmur of a television filling the comfortable silence between us. Kanya was mending a tear in a canvas work jacket, her brow furrowed in concentration. I was watching the dust motes dance in the light, feeling peacefully adrift when a news anchor's sharp, professional voice cut through the haze. Still no leads in the disappearance of heiress Anya Sharma, who vanished 2 weeks ago after her car was found abandoned near a landslide on a remote mountain road. The name meant nothing to me, but Kanya's hands stilled, the needle pausing in midair. Her gaze flickered from her mending to the small television perched on a high shelf. I followed her line of sight, my curiosity piqued by her sudden stillness. And then I saw it. A photograph filled the screen, a professionally taken portrait of a young woman with a polite, practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her hair was styled, her makeup flawless. She wore pearls. She was a stranger, polished and perfect, from a world of wealth and privilege I couldn't possibly imagine. Except the face was mine. The air rushed from my lungs. The room tilted, the sunlight seeming to bleach all the color from the walls. It was the face from the mirror, but it wasn't. This version of me was a carefully constructed facade, a person I didn't know, yet undeniably was. Suddenly, the image on the screen fractured. A searing pain shot through my skull, and for a heart-stopping second, I was somewhere else. My hands, slick with sweat, were clenched around a steering wheel. Rain hammered against a windshield, the wipers fighting a losing battle against the deluge. A sense of absolute suffocating desperation washed over me, a primal need to flee, to escape something terrible that was right behind me. The feeling was so powerful, so visceral, it was more real than the clinic room, more real than the woman sitting beside me. I cried out, a raw, strangled sound, my hands flying to my head as if to hold the splintering pieces of my mind together. The memory was gone as quickly as it came, leaving me gasping, trembling, the phantom feeling of the steering wheel still tingling in my palms. Hey, look at me. Kanya was kneeling in front of me, her own work forgotten. Her hands gently covered mine, a firm, warm anchor in the dizzying storm. Breathe. Just breathe. You're here. You're safe. My eyes locked on hers, wide with a new kind of terror. The emptiness was frightening, but this single violent fragment of a past I was running from was infinitely worse. "They'll be looking for you," Kanya said, her voice soft but laced with a new urgency. "That picture, it will be everywhere now. The world will rush in and it won't care if you're ready for it." She squeezed my hands. "You don't have to face it here, not like this. Come back with me, to the mine. It's quiet, it's safe. I can give you a place to heal, to figure this out on your own terms." Her offer was a lifeline thrown into a raging sea. Stay here and be consumed by the ghost of Anya Sharma, or go with the only person who had shown me genuine kindness, the only person who saw me, not a missing heiress. The memory of desperation, of a frantic escape echoed in my soul. I didn't know what I was running from then, but I knew with absolute certainty that I wasn't ready to be found.
Chapter 3. Life at the mine was a balm. The sharp scent of pine and damp earth replaced the antiseptic of the clinic. The jarring emptiness in my head was soothed by the rhythm of a simple, tangible world. I spent my days in Kanya's sprawling garden, my hands buried in the cool soil, discovering an instinct for nurturing life that felt more real than any memory. In the evenings, we'd sit on the porch of her small, sturdy house, watching the sun bleed into the jagged peaks of the mountains, a comfortable silence settling between us as easily as the coming night. With Kanya, I wasn't a blank slate. I was just me, the person who was learning to laugh again, who found joy in a newly sprouted seedling, who felt a strange, fluttering warmth in her chest whenever Kanya's hand brushed against hers. For the first time, I felt like a whole person, not a collection of missing pieces. I was building a life in the quiet spaces Kanya had given me, and a dangerous, hopeful thought had begun to take root. Maybe I didn't need the past. Maybe this was enough. The illusion shattered on a Tuesday. I was watering the tomatoes, humming a tune Kanya had taught me, when the sound of an engine, too sleek and quiet for a mining truck, drifted up the dusty road. I looked up to see a polished black sedan, glinting in the sun like a beetle, completely alien against the rustic landscape. It crunched to a halt, and a man in a perfectly tailored suit stepped out, his city shoes looking ridiculous in the red dirt. My heart seized. He wasn't looking at the mine or the house. He was looking directly at me. Kanya came out onto the porch, wiping her hands on a rag, her body instantly tense. The man approached us, his smile polite, but devoid of warmth. "Anya Sharma?" he asked, his eyes locking onto mine. The name, my name, sounded like an accusation. I couldn't speak, so I just stood there, frozen, the watering can still in my hand. "My name is Mr. Davies," he said, pulling an envelope from his breast pocket. "Your family has been very worried. They've asked me to bring you home." He held out the envelope. Inside was a driver's license, the smiling, polished girl from the news staring up at me. There were photographs of me with people I didn't know, an older, severe-looking couple who must have been my parents, all of us standing stiffly in front of a grand mansion.
And underneath it all was a letter, written on thick cream-colored stationery. Kanya moved to my side, her arms crossed, her presence a silent shield. "She's not ready," she said, her voice low and firm. "That's for her to decide," Mr. Davies replied smoothly, his gaze never leaving my face. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. The words were elegant, but the message was a command. "Come home. Your responsibilities are waiting. We have all been patient with this unfortunate situation, but it is time to put it behind us. Your fiancé Liam is waiting for you." Your fiancé. The two words struck me with the force of a physical blow. A fiancé. A man I was promised to? A life, a whole life, had been lived and planned and agreed upon without my consent, without my knowledge. The fragile peace I had built crumbled to dust, revealing the terrifying truth. I wasn't just a person with a missing past. I was a person with obligations, with connections, with a man who was waiting for a woman I would never be again. I looked from the letter to Kanya, and I saw the sadness in her eyes, the understanding that our quiet world had just been invaded and would never be the same. The choice wasn't a choice at all. Hiding here would no longer be a sanctuary. It would be a prison, haunted by the ghosts of a life I was too afraid to face. My goal, terrifying and unwelcome, solidified in my mind with brutal clarity. I couldn't build a future on a foundation of unanswered questions. I had to go back, not to become Anya Sharma again, but to understand who she was so I could finally be free to become myself. "I have to go," I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Later that evening, as I packed the few simple clothes Kanya had given me into a bag, she stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. The sadness in her expression was a quiet, painful weight between us. "You don't have to love the person you were," she said softly. "You just have to understand her. Find the truth, Anya. And when you do," she paused, her gaze unwavering, "remember the path back here. I'll be waiting."
Chapter 4. The estate wasn't a home. It was a statement. From the moment the black sedan crunched up the ridiculously long gravel driveway, I felt like I was arriving at a museum. The house was a sprawling mansion of cold, white stone and dark, imposing windows that seemed to watch me with a kind of detached judgment. The lawns were a perfect, manicured green, a sterile carpet that made me ache for the wild, untamed garden I had left behind. My parents, Eleanor and Richard Sharma, were waiting for me on the steps. They looked exactly as they had in the photograph, elegant, severe, and radiating an aura of disciplined control. My mother's embrace was brief, her hands cool on my arms, her perfume a cloud of expensive florals that smelled like a gilded cage. "Anya, darling," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "we were so worried. Thank goodness this ordeal is over." My father shook my hand, a firm, dry grip that felt more like a business transaction than a welcome. "Good to have you back, Anya. Things have been in a state of flux." They led me inside into a cavernous foyer with a marble floor so polished I could see the terrified stranger on its surface. As they guided me through the silent, cavernous rooms, they spoke of me as if I were a character in a book they had both read. "This was always your favorite room," Eleanor said, gesturing to a sunless library with floor-to-ceiling books that looked like they'd never been opened. "You could spend hours in here, planning your projects."
You were always so dedicated, Richard added, his voice tinged with a pride that felt completely unearned by the hollowed-out person standing before him. Focused, knew what you wanted. Did I? The person they described, dutiful, reserved, dedicated to her career and her impending marriage, felt like a phantom. I felt like an actress who had been pushed onto a stage without a script, the entire audience expecting a performance I didn't know how to give. The final act of this strange play began when a man walked in from the terrace. He was handsome in a sharp, tailored way that matched the house, with a charismatic smile that seemed to light up the room. But when his eyes landed on me, they held a look of proprietary satisfaction that sent a chill down my spine. "There she is," he said, his voice a smooth baritone. He crossed the room and took my hands in his grip a little too tight. "Anya, I can't tell you how relieved I am." This was Liam, my fiancé. He treated my amnesia not as a trauma, but as a temporary and frustrating glitch. He spoke of our future as if it were a delayed shipment he was eager to get back on schedule. "We'll get you back on your feet," he said, his thumb stroking the back of my hand in a way that was meant to be soothing but felt like an assertion of ownership. Every time I tried to ask a real question, to probe beneath the surface of the perfect life they described, I was met with a gentle but firm redirection. Was I happy? I asked them over a formal, silent dinner that evening. My mother offered a tight smile. "You were content, dear. You understood your duties. Did I like to travel?" "You were far too focused on your work for frivolous trips," my father stated, as if it were a point of honor. I felt Kanya's world, the world of warm earth and easy laughter, slipping away with every carefully chosen word. The disconnect between the person I felt I was becoming, the woman who loved the smell of rain and the feel of dirt under her fingernails, grew into a chasm. Later that night, alone in a bedroom that felt more like a luxury hotel suite than a personal space, I found a silver-framed photograph on the nightstand. It was of Liam and me. We were at some fancy event, me in a shimmering gown, him in a tuxedo. He was smiling confidently at the camera, his arm wrapped securely around my waist. The woman in the photo, the woman who was me, was smiling too. But as I stared at her face, at the polite, empty curve of her lips, I realized she wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at Liam, and her eyes, unlike her smile, held the same desperate, hunted look I now saw in the mirror every single day.
Chapter 5. The days at the estate were a masterclass in gentle gaslighting. My life was presented to me in a series of curated anecdotes and carefully selected photo albums. I was walked through my old office, a minimalist glass box overlooking the city, where my father pointed out awards I had apparently won for designs of soulless corporate plazas and luxury golf courses. I looked at the glossy architectural models and felt nothing. No spark of recognition, no flicker of pride. It was like learning about the life of a stranger who just happened to have my face. The first crack in their narrative appeared in that very office. My father was explaining the importance of the upcoming merger with Liam's company, a deal that was apparently the crowning achievement of my career. "The foundation you laid was brilliant, Anya," he said, his hand resting on my shoulder. "This marriage, this merger, it's your duty to see it through. It secures the family's legacy." The word duty struck a dissonant chord deep inside me. The air in the room grew thick, the sleek chrome desk seeming to warp at the edges. A searing pain flared behind my eyes, and for a moment, I wasn't there. I'm in a different office, one with dark wood and the faint, acrid smell of cigar smoke. My father's face is inches from mine, his complexion ruddy with anger. "It is not a request, it is your duty." His voice booms, the sound rattling in my chest. A voice, raw and shaking with a rage I don't recognize, fires back. "It's my voice. You call it duty, I call it a prison. You're not securing a legacy, you're selling your daughter."
I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth as the vision receded, leaving me dizzy and nauseous. My father's grip on my shoulder tightened. "Are you all right? You look pale. You're overdoing it." His concern was a velvet glove, but I could feel the steel beneath it, pushing me back into the box of the compliant, forgetful daughter. The visions grew more frequent after that, small, unsettling fragments that didn't align with the official story. The most significant one came late one night when I couldn't sleep. I was wandering through my sterile bedroom when I noticed a large leather-bound portfolio propped against a bookshelf. My masterworks, according to my mother. Driven by a strange compulsion, I unzipped it. On top were the expected blueprints and technical drawings for the cold, impressive buildings my father admired. But my fingers felt something different underneath. Tucked away at the very bottom, like a hidden secret, was a sheaf of softer, textured paper. I pulled them out. They were sketches. Dozens of them, rendered in charcoal with a passion and detail that was entirely absent from the corporate designs. There was a rooftop garden for what looked like a low-income housing project, a vibrant, winding sensory garden for a children's hospital, a small, sustainable community park designed to harvest rainwater. As I touched the paper, I felt the phantom sensation of a charcoal stick in my hand, the memory of working late into the night, not for a client, but for the sheer joy of it. This felt real. This felt like me. This was the same feeling I had when my hands were in the soil of Kanya's garden. It was a secret, joyful rebellion against the world of glass and steel I had supposedly embraced. The final, most terrifying memory came, as I should have expected, with Liam. He was talking about wedding plans, showing me pictures of a grand, historic ballroom on his tablet. "Once we're married, everything will fall into place," he said, draping his arm over my shoulders. "You'll be mine, and we can finally get back to normal." His possessive tone, the casual certainty of it, was like a key turning in a lock I didn't know existed. The world dissolved into a pinpoint of darkness and sound. I'm huddled in the dark, the scent of cedar sharp in my nostrils, a closet. A phone is pressed so hard against my ear it hurts. My heart is a frantic bird beating against my ribs. My own voice is a choked, desperate whisper, tears streaming down my face. "I can't do this anymore," I sobbed into the receiver. "He doesn't see me. He just sees an asset, an acquisition. But I have a plan. I'm getting out tonight." The memory cut off. I had no idea who was on the other end of the line, whose silent, steady presence I had been confessing to. I only knew the raw, unadulterated panic and the sliver of defiant hope in my own voice. I flinched away from Liam's touch so violently that he actually took a step back, his charming smile faltering. "Anya, what is it?" I looked at him, at my parents, who had just entered the room, their faces masks of polite concern. A dutiful daughter, a focused career woman, a happy fiancé. It was all a lie. They hadn't just omitted details. They had built a completely false narrative. They were hiding the truth of who I was, and more importantly, what I had been trying to do. My mission was no longer just to remember my past. It was to uncover it.
Chapter 6. My bedroom had become my prison. Every polished surface, every tastefully neutral color felt like a component of a carefully constructed lie. The dutiful daughter, the brilliant architect, the loving fiancé. I saw ghosts of her everywhere, and I didn't believe in a single one of them. The fragmented memories were my truth, jagged pieces of a puzzle that showed a completely different picture. I just needed to find the missing edge that connected them all. Driven by a certainty I couldn't explain, I began to search, not for anything specific, but for a flaw in the perfect facade. I ran my hands over the spines of the unread books, tapped the walls searching for a hollow space, checked behind the bland, impersonal art. Nothing. It was all exactly as it should be. My attention finally settled on the antique writing desk in the corner. It was a beautiful piece of dark cherry wood, elegant and solid. My mother had told me it was a family heirloom. It was also the one place in the room that felt incongruous with the rest of the minimalist decor. It felt like it held secrets. I pulled out the drawers, sifting through stationery and unused pens. I ran my fingers along the underside, searching for a taped key or a hidden lever. Frustration began to prick at me. I was about to give up when my hand brushed against a small, almost invisible knot in the wood on the interior side panel of the knee hole. On pure instinct, I pressed it. There was a soft click. A section of the ornate back panel of the desk, no bigger than a shoebox, popped open, revealing a dark, hollow cavity. My breath hitched. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, hopeful rhythm. Reaching into the darkness, my fingers brushed against the cool, crisp edges of stacked paper, and then the smooth, cold plastic of a small electronic device. I pulled the contents out into the lamplight. It was a thick bundle of cash, thousands of dollars, bound by a simple rubber band. And beside it, a cheap, featureless burner phone, the kind of phone someone buys when they don't want to be found. My hands were trembling so badly, I could barely hold the device. I found the power button, pressing it down and praying it still had a charge. The screen flickered to life, asking for a passcode, a simple 4-digit PIN. My mind was a blank. I had no idea. I closed my eyes, trying to recall a number, any number. Nothing came. Defeated, I slumped back, but my thumb hovered over the screen. Without thinking, my fingers moved, tracing a pattern that felt familiar, instinctual. A simple Z shape. The phone unlocked. There was only one application on the phone besides the call function, a heavily encrypted email client. I opened it. There was a single thread of conversation, a back and forth with a contact named Sparrow. My heart pounded as I read the messages, my own story being revealed to me in cold digital text. The emails detailed everything. The suffocation I felt under my family's expectations, the possessiveness of Liam, whom I referred to as the warden, the secret passion for my community garden sketches, and then the plan, a meticulous, carefully laid out plan to escape. There were details about a new identity, a bus route, a small town 1,000 miles away where no one would know the name Sharma. Sparrow was my accomplice, my lifeline, my one true friend who knew the person I really was. My eyes scanned frantically to the last message in the thread, sent from my phone, dated the night of the landslide. My own words, a final, desperate declaration of independence, stared back at me from the screen. Tonight's the night. I'm leaving for good. The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the desk. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a tragic, random event. It was a failed escape. I wasn't a passive victim of circumstance. I was a fighter. The woman in the car that night wasn't drifting through life. She was flooring it, driving away from a life she refused to accept, toward a freedom she was willing to risk everything for. A surge of adrenaline, a fierce, defiant pride washed through me, clearing the fog of confusion and fear. I finally knew the woman from my past. She wasn't the placid doll my parents described. She was a rebel, a survivor. She was brave. And she'd left me a mission. My goal was no longer to passively remember what had happened to me. It was to actively uncover the truth of my own rebellion. I had to find Sparrow. I had to finish what she started.
I picked up the burner phone, my hand steady now, my purpose clear and sharp as glass. The hunt was on.
Chapter 7. Armed with the knowledge from the burner phone, I felt a new, steely resolve solidify in my veins. I was no longer a lost girl searching for memories. I was an operative behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence. I called them to the library that evening, my father, my mother, and Liam. I needed to see their faces when the carefully constructed walls of their story began to crack. I stood before the cold, unlit fireplace, the burner phone a heavy secret in my pocket. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calmer than I felt, about the person I was before the accident. My mother, Eleanor, placed a placating hand on my arm. "Anya, darling, we've been over this. You're putting too much pressure on yourself." "No," I said, stepping away from her touch. "I've been remembering things, arguments, feelings. I remember feeling trapped." A flicker of something, perhaps annoyance, crossed my father's face before being smoothed over. "Every young woman feels a bit of pre-wedding anxiety," he said dismissively. "It was nothing more than a temporary crisis of confidence. You were a bit rebellious, but we were certain you would have come to your senses." The condescension in his tone was galling. They were reframing my desperate bid for freedom as a childish tantrum. "A crisis of confidence?" I challenged, my voice rising. "I remember sketching gardens, community projects. I remember pouring my heart into them, hiding them. Why would I do that if I was so dedicated to the corporate work?" Liam, who had been watching silently, stepped forward, his charming smile firmly in place. "Anya, you always had your little hobbies. We all thought it was admirable. But you were smart enough to know where your real duties were." That word again. Duty. My duty to what? To this family? To a merger? The words were out before I could stop them. A direct echo of the memory. The air in the room went still and cold. My father's eyes narrowed. "What do you remember about the merger?" This was it, the moment the battle lines were drawn. Liam's smile vanished, replaced with a mask of hardened seriousness. The charismatic fiancé was gone, and in his place was a ruthless businessman. "Anya, this isn't a game," he said, his voice dropping to a low, coercive thrum. "Your disappearance did more than just worry us. The Sharma Vale merger is the largest deal of our careers. Contracts have been signed. Investors are leveraged. The entire agreement is predicated not just on our companies joining, but our families. It's predicated on us." He took a step closer, invading my space. "Your little adventure has put hundreds of millions of dollars, not to mention your father's company, at risk. You have a responsibility to fix this." The weight of his words was meant to crush me, and a part of me buckled under the sheer scale of the consequences. My escape hadn't just been a personal act, it had been a financial bomb. My mother saw her opening and moved in. Her weapon of choice, not threats, but guilt. "We just want our daughter back," she said, her eyes welling with strategic tears. "The one who understood her place, who loved her family. This confusion, this defiance, it started when you were with that woman at the mine." My blood ran cold. "Kanya has nothing to do with this," I snapped. "Doesn't she?" Liam countered, circling me like a predator. "A simple mine owner who just so happens to find a missing heiress. It seems she's filled your head with this romantic nonsense about following your heart. People like her don't understand our world. They don't understand the pressures, the responsibilities. She is a distraction from the life that is waiting for you, the life you were born for." They were working in concert, a finely tuned machine of manipulation.
boxing me in with financial threats, emotional guilt, and now an attack on the only person I trusted. They were trying to isolate me, to make me believe that the sanctuary I'd found was a fantasy, and this gilded cage was my only reality. I felt the walls closing in, the air growing thin. They had admitted the truth, only to twist it into another weapon to be used against me.
Chapter 8. In the suffocating opulence of the estate, the memory of Kanya was my only anchor. I would retreat into the thought of her, the scent of pine and soil that clung to her clothes, the steady warmth in her dark eyes, the memory of her quiet, unwavering belief in me. She was my one undisputed truth in a world of lies. Liam, it seemed, knew exactly where to place his final, most devastating blow. He found me on the terrace, staring out at the manicured prison of the lawn. He didn't use threats this time. He came to me under the guise of gentle, sorrowful concern, which was far more insidious. In his hands, he held a slim leather portfolio. "Anya, I know this has been difficult," he began, his voice a soft murmur, "and I know you've grown attached to Ms. Al-Jamil. I can't blame you. You were vulnerable, and she was kind. But there are things you don't know, things you couldn't possibly know." He opened the portfolio on the stone balustrade. Inside were official-looking financial statements, columns of figures highlighted in red, legal notices of default. The name of Kanya's mining operation was at the top of every page. "Her mine is on the verge of collapse," Liam said, his tone dripping with false pity. "It has been for months. She's leveraged to the hilt, one bad season away from losing everything." My stomach clenched, but I held his gaze. "She's a proud person. She wouldn't have told me." "Perhaps," Liam conceded smoothly, before turning to the next document. It was a signed affidavit from a nurse at the clinic. My blood ran cold as I read it. The statement claimed that on the second day of my stay, before I was fully lucid, Kanya had been asking questions about the missing Sharma heiress she'd seen on the news, showing the staff my picture on her phone. "She knew who you were, Anya. She knew who you were from the very beginning." A miracle, wasn't it? A bankrupt mine owner stumbles upon a lost, amnesiac heiress worth billions right on her doorstep. A raw physical sickness churned in my gut. I wanted to scream, to throw the papers in his face, to claw at his smug, handsome features. My heart, my soul, the person I had become at the mine, screamed that it was a lie. Kanya's kindness was real. The safety I felt with her was real. But the seed of doubt, planted in the fertile ground of my own fractured mind, began to sprout. My own memories were a black hole. I couldn't remember those first few days with any clarity. I couldn't definitively say it didn't happen that way. I had been manipulated by my family my entire life. Was I so naive to think I was immune now? What if I had simply traded one gilded cage for a rustic one? What if I had mistaken a predator's patience for a savior's kindness? The doubt turned inward, poisoning everything. I couldn't trust my own judgment. I couldn't trust the feelings that had bloomed so warmly in my chest. If my love for Kanya was built on a lie, then everything was a lie. The life I was running from and the life I was running toward were both illusions. And I was just a pawn, lost in the middle. I was utterly, completely alone, trapped. The past was a prison, and the future was a mirage. There was no escape. There was no one I could trust, least of all myself. That night, I did the cruelest thing I have ever done. I picked up my phone, my real phone, not the burner, and called the number I knew by heart. She answered on the second ring, her voice a balm of warmth and concern that I no longer deserved. "Anya, is everything all right?" "Don't call me again.
I said, my voice a dead, hollow thing. The words felt like swallowing shards of glass. There was a stunned silence on the other end. What? Anya, what's wrong? Talk to me. You can't be a part of my life, I forced out, believing in that moment that I was protecting her from the wreckage of my family, from Liam, from the chaos that surrounded me. But deep down, I knew I was also protecting myself from the devastating possibility that she wasn't who I thought she was. Before she could reply, before I could shatter completely under the pain in her silence, I ended the call. I sank to the floor of my sterile room, my anchor cut loose, and let the darkness I had been fighting for so long finally, completely, pull me under.
Chapter 9. The dress hung on the back of the door, a shimmering sheath of pale gold. It was my costume for the final act, the shroud for the woman I had tried to become. Tomorrow morning I would put it on, stand beside Liam at a press conference, and smile as he announced our renewed engagement and the bright future of the Sharma Vale merger. I would become the dutiful daughter, the compliant fiancé, the ghost in my own life. I had lost. The fight was over. Numbly, I moved around the room, gathering the last remnants of my failed rebellion. The charcoal sketches of community gardens, the burner phone. I was going to put them in the back of the closet, bury them like the person who had created them. I picked up the cheap plastic phone, my thumb tracing its smooth, anonymous surface. It was a relic from a braver woman. One last time, I thought. One last look at the conversation with the friend I couldn't remember, the only person who had known my truth. I powered it on, my fingers tracing the familiar Z pattern to unlock it. The email client opened, and my heart stopped. At the top of the screen, in bold, was a single line I had never seen before. An unread email from Sparrow, sent just minutes after my final, frantic, "I'm leaving for good" message. An email that must have arrived in the chaos of the crash, lying dormant and unseen all this time. The subject line was a desperate plea. "Anya, don't go until you see this." My hand started to shake. With a trembling finger, I tapped it open. There was no long, comforting message, just a few short, urgent lines of text and an attachment. "He cornered me today. Knew I was helping you. He's more dangerous than we thought. I dug deeper. Found this. This is what he tried to make you sign last week. This is why you're running. Be safe. Be free. Sparrow." Below, there was a single PDF file. I clicked on it. The document that loaded was cold, official, and dense with legal jargon. It was titled Prenuptial Agreement, Vale and Sharma. I scrolled through the legalese, my blood turning to ice. It wasn't a standard prenup. It was a corporate assassination disguised as a marriage contract. Clause after clause detailed the transfer of power, my shares, my voting rights on the board, my inheritance. In the event of a divorce, which could be initiated by him for the vaguest of reasons, it would all be transferred not back to me or to my family, but into his sole irrevocable control. He wasn't marrying me. He was executing a hostile takeover. And then, as my eyes scanned the final damning page, the world fractured. The sterile text of the document became the trigger, the final key that unlocked everything. The dam in my mind didn't just crack, it exploded, and the past came rushing in, not as a fragment, but as a tidal wave. I am screaming at my father in his study, the signed prenup clutched in my fist. "This isn't a marriage, it's a corporate suicide note. And you want me to sign it?" His face is purple with rage, his voice a roar. "You will do your duty." The memory shifts. I'm in my closet, whispering frantically into the burner phone to Sparrow, the plan solidifying. He's a monster. I have to go tonight. Then the car. The storm is a primal fury outside. The windshield wipers a frantic, useless metronome. Rain and tears blur my vision, but a wild, exhilarating feeling is surging through my veins. It isn't just fear, it's freedom.
For the first time in my life, I am in control of my own trajectory, my own destiny, even if it's into the teeth of a storm. I see the skid on the wet asphalt, the sickening lurch of the car as it loses traction, the blinding headlights of a truck jackknifing across the slick road, the world spinning, a kaleidoscope of glass and rain and terror, and then the final deafening crunch of metal on metal. I gasped, stumbling back against the desk, the phone clattering to the floor. The room swum back into focus. I was whole. All the pieces, the anger, the fear, the secret passions, the desperate hope, they all slammed back into place. I wasn't the ghost of Anya Sharma. I was Anya Sharma, the one who fought back, the one who ran. The numbness in my soul was gone, brunned away by a white-hot, cleansing rage. Liam hadn't just manipulated me, he had tried to orchestrate the complete destruction of my family from the inside out, using me as his willing weapon. My parents, in their blind ambition, had almost handed him the gun. I looked at the pale gold dress, no longer a shroud, but a suit of armor. The press conference wasn't my surrender, it was my battlefield. And this time, I wasn't running away from the fight. I was running towards it.
Chapter 10. My first coherent thought, cutting through the maelstrom of returning memories, was a single, urgent name: Kanya. I had pushed her away. I had taken Liam's poison and let it infect the one pure thing in my life. The shame was a physical blow, but it was eclipsed by a desperate, overwhelming need to hear her voice. My fingers, now steady with purpose, flew across the screen of my phone. I found her name and pressed call, my heart hammering against my ribs, not with fear, but with a fragile, terrifying hope. I didn't know if she would answer. I didn't know if she would ever want to speak to me again. She answered on the second ring. Anya? Her voice was cautious, laced with the hurt I had put there, but she had answered. She had answered immediately. Tears I didn't know I was holding back began to stream down my face. Kanya, I remember. I choked out, the words a torrent of relief and regret. I remember everything. The accident, why I was running, everything. Liam, he lied. He twisted everything. I was so lost, and I let him. I'm so sorry. I confessed it all. The prenup, the fight with my father, the burner phone, the escape, the way Liam had poisoned my mind against her. I didn't make excuses. I just laid the raw, ugly truth of my weakness at her feet. There was a moment of silence on the other end, a pause that stretched for an eternity. When she finally spoke, her voice was cleared of all its previous hurt, replaced by the low, steady warmth that felt like coming home. I never believed him, Anya, she said softly, not for a second. I just knew you had to find your own way out of the dark. Are you out now? Yes, I whispered, a fresh wave of tears falling, this time from sheer, unadulterated relief. Her unwavering faith was the final piece of armor I needed. Then do it, she said, her voice firm, a solid foundation beneath my feet. Be the woman who got in that car and drove into the storm. I'm right here. We said nothing more. We didn't need to. I ended the call, my resolve forged into steel. The next morning, I walked into the press conference looking every inch the Sharma heiress. I wore the pale gold dress, my hair was styled, and my makeup was a flawless mask of calm. My father gave a nod of approval. Liam squeezed my hand, a proprietary gesture of victory. They saw a doll, perfectly restored and placed back in her box. They had no idea they were walking into an execution. We took our places at the podium, the blinding slash of cameras like a volley of gunfire. My father spoke first, his voice booming with false sentiment about the joy of having his daughter home. Then Liam stepped to the microphone, his charismatic smile plastered on his face. As many of you know, the last few months have been a trying time for our families, but I'm thrilled to announce that Anya is back where she belongs. With her memory returning, she is ready to reaffirm her commitment, both to me and to the bright future of the Sharma-Vale merger. He turned to me, his eyes gleaming with triumph, gesturing for me to take his place.
Anya has a few words she'd like to share. I stepped up to the microphone, the prepared statement sitting untouched on the lectern. I looked out at the sea of reporters, then let my gaze settle on Liam, on my father. I let them see the smile on my face, not the polite, empty smile of the girl in the photographs, but a sharp, dangerous smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Thank you, Liam," I began, my voice clear and ringing through the silent room. "You're right. My memory has returned. All of it." I saw the first flicker of unease in Liam's expression. I remembered that the Sharmavale merger was not a partnership, but a hostile takeover, contingent on a prenuptial agreement that would have effectively handed Liam Vale controlling interest in my family's company. A collective gasp went through the room. My father's face went white. I remember that when I refused to sign this predatory document, my concerns were dismissed by my own family. I remember being told it was my duty to sacrifice myself for their ambition. And so I made a choice. The person I was, the person you all think you see standing here, made the brave choice to escape that duty. My tragic accident was me running for my life. I held up the burner phone, which I had pulled from my clutch. The proof of this is all right here, and copies have already been sent to several reputable financial journalists. Panic erupted. Liam lunged for the microphone, but I stood my ground. This press conference is over, as is my engagement to Liam Vale. And as of this moment, I am officially severing all ties with Sharma Industries and the business practices it represents. I looked directly into the lens of the nearest camera, no longer speaking to the room, but to the world, to the woman who was watching from a small house on a hill. The person you thought I was is gone. I am choosing a different future, my own future. And with that, I turned my back on the chaos, on my stunned family and my apoplectic ex-fiancé, and walked off the stage, leaving the ruins of their empire burning behind me. I didn't look back. I was finally free.
Chapter 11. I didn't get far. Before I could reach the exit, a hand clamped down on my arm, spinning me around. It was Liam, his face a mask of incandescent fury, the charming facade stripped away to reveal the predator beneath. My father was right behind him, his expression ashen with shock and dawning horror. "What do you think you're doing?" Liam hissed, his voice a low, vicious snarl that was meant for me alone. "You've just destroyed everything, our lives, our companies, you foolish, selfish little—" "Let go of me," I said, my voice dangerously calm. I didn't try to pull away. I just met his gaze, and for the first time, I saw that he wasn't looking at an asset or a pawn. He was looking at me. And he was afraid. "You destroyed this, Liam," I stated, the truth of it ringing with absolute clarity. "With your greed. You were never going to marry me. You were going to acquire me." My father finally found his voice, a strangled, desperate sound. "Anya, please, we can fix this. Retract the statement. Say you were confused, still recovering." I turned my gaze to him, and in his eyes, I saw the pathetic desperation of a man who had just watched his kingdom crumble. There was no anger left in me for him, only a profound and weary pity. "Fix it? You can't fix this, Dad. You broke it when you decided your legacy was worth more than your daughter's life." The confrontation wasn't about them anymore. It wasn't about the merger or the money or the scandal that was already exploding across every newsfeed in the country. This was about something deeper. It was a final, quiet settling of accounts with the person I used to be. I looked from my father's broken expression to Liam's impotent rage, and I felt the last ghostly chains of my old life fall away. I had spent so much of my journey, both before the accident and after, being terrified of the woman I was, afraid she was weak,
compliant and complicit, afraid she was someone I wouldn't like or respect. But standing here, in the wreckage of the life she had so courageously tried to flee, I finally understood her. She wasn't weak. She was a quiet rebel, nurturing a secret world of passion and creativity under the noses of her captors. She wasn't compliant. She was a strategist, meticulously planning her escape from a gilded prison. And when the moment came, she wasn't a victim. She was a fighter who got in a car and drove headfirst into a storm, choosing the terrifying uncertainty of freedom over the slow, suffocating death of her gilded cage. She had started the journey. It was my duty, my real duty, to finish it. "I know you'll never understand this," I said, my voice softening, speaking as much to the ghost of my past self as to the men in front of me. "But the woman who ran away that night didn't destroy my life. She saved it." With a final, decisive tug, I pulled my arm from Liam's grasp. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I had found my power, and it wasn't in shouting or in anger. It was in the quiet, unshakable certainty of my own worth. I turned and walked away, leaving them standing amidst the flashing cameras and shouting reporters. Every step I took was a conscious choice, a step away from the marble floors, the suffocating expectations, and the ghosts of a life that no longer belonged to me. I wasn't running anymore. I was walking toward the scent of pine and damp earth, toward a woman who had been waiting for me all along. I was, finally, going home.
Chapter 12. 6 months later, the air didn't smell like expensive perfume or sterile boardrooms. It smelled of turned earth, blossoming tomato vines, and the faint, sweet scent of approaching rain. My hands were not manicured. They were smudged with soil, my fingernails lined with the dirt of a life I was actively, joyfully building. The space behind Kanya's house, once a neglected patch of rocky ground, was now a thriving community garden. Terraced beds I had designed followed the natural contours of the hill, preventing erosion and maximizing sun exposure. A rainwater harvesting system, built with the help of 2 curious miners on their day off, fed into a network of irrigation channels. It was a place of life and collaboration, a patchwork of greens and vibrant color that was more beautiful than any corporate plaza I had ever designed, or been forced to design. This wasn't a hobby, this was my work, and it was my joy. Kanya came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist and resting her chin on my shoulder. Her touch was as familiar and as necessary to me now as the sun. I leaned back into her embrace, a comfortable, perfect fit. We stood in silence for a moment, looking out over our creation. "The peppers are coming in," she said, her voice a low hum against my ear. "Mrs. Gable is going to be ecstatic." I smiled, and the kids have almost finished the mural on the water tank. "They're proud of this place," Kanya said. "You've given them something." "No," I corrected her gently, turning in her arms to face her. "We gave them something, together." Her dark, earthy eyes held mine. In them, I saw no trace of the missing heiress or the corporate fugitive. She just saw me. Anya, the woman who loved the feel of soil in her hands, who could map the constellations on a clear night, who hummed when she worked, just like Kanya did. The fallout from the press conference was seismic. The Sharma-Vail merger had imploded in a spectacular fashion, sparking lawsuits and a full-blown corporate scandal. I read about it sometimes, a detached observer, watching a drama from a world away. It had nothing to do with me anymore.
I had walked away with nothing but the clothes on my back and the contents of the burner phone, which I had given to Sparrow, whose real name was Chloe, and whose tearful, relieved hug I would never forget. My past was no longer a terrifying void or a collection of haunting fragments. It was simply a story. The story of a woman who had to lose her memory to truly find herself. I hadn't erased the old Anya. I had integrated her. I had her courage, her quiet defiance, her secret passion. But now they were no longer secret. They were the foundation of the life I was building, a life of my own design. Kanya's hand came up to cup my cheek, her calloused thumb stroking my skin. "Are you happy?" she asked, a question she still asked me sometimes, as if to make sure this new reality was solid beneath my feet. I looked at the flourishing garden, a testament to growth and renewal. I looked at the small, sturdy house that had become my sanctuary, and now my home. I looked into the eyes of the woman who had offered me shelter, not just from a storm, but from a life that was never mine. "Happy doesn't even begin to cover it," I whispered. The first drops of rain began to fall, cool and cleansing. We didn't move. We just stood there together as the shower washed over our garden, the scent of wet earth rising up around us like a promise. This was my new normal, not an ending, but a new, beautiful, and authentic beginning.
And so our journey through Remains the series concludes for now. We hope you found as much inspiration and enjoyment in listening as we did in sharing it. If you loved this experience, please hit that like button. It truly helps our channel reach more book lovers. We'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What resonated with you most? And of course, if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another enriching audiobook. Don't let the adventure stop here. Continue your literary exploration immediately with our other titles. Your next great listen is just a click away.